What is something you've done slash seen slash heard so bizarre that no matter how many times you tell it, nobody believes you? Saw a guy at a full moon party in Thailand fucking a tree. Drunk dude at a party. When I was young kept asking girls to hook up. Everyone said no. I went outside in the early morning and he was passed out against a tree. I went over to tell him to hydrate and crash on a couch. But as I got closer, I realized his pants were open and he had become one with the tree. I decided I didn't really care enough about his hydration and upcoming hangover to get involved with any of that. So I went back inside and told everyone. I'm not posting this here as a response to the original post though, because as soon as I announced it to the crowd, everyone went outside to look. So they all believed me. That guy took tree hugging way too far. I had a 3rd grade teacher who was awful to me, but absolutely adored my older brother and younger sister. My parents loved this lady, but she was always a T to me for whatever reason. One day when we were doing multiplication tables I got a few answers wrong, and she said to me that's okay. People still need their groceries bagged. She said this to an 8-year-old. To this day my parents nor my siblings believe me. I don't think an 8-year-old could come up with that insult out of thin air. I believe you. This one kid bullied me relentlessly. As an adult I realize he had severe issues of his own. In her class too. Especially at recess. When I told my teacher about it, she told me no one likes a tattletale pigbanus. But in all seriousness this also happened. Only person I truly hate in my life. If I ever see her again I hope it's in an ISIS video. That last sentence escalated really quickly lol. Some time ago as a young cashier, a mentally ill woman threw a candy bar at me, called me a werewolf, then sprinted out of the store. Bonus, another woman cornered me while I was stocking shelves and trapped me in a conversation that got progressively weirder until we reached a point where she was insisting we are all aliens and nobody is a true human. The conversation ended with her giving me her business card with her alien name and alien email address on it. As someone who worked at a gas station I can assure you I believe you. I was refilling the coffees and a customer grabbed me by my throat. Unprompted he just latches onto my throat. My manager banned him from the store and called the police. The best boss I ever had. Gas stations are entrances to the twilight zone and nobody can convince me otherwise. Gas station graveyard shift was some of the craziest ever. One I worked at had 5 bars and a Navy base within 4 blocks. I was on a first name basis with the police and shore patrol. I was in a Waffle House in High Point, North Carolina once at like 2:30 AM with my friend. Slightly buzzed ourselves, but not drunk by any means. This was like 1998. A man walks in, very drunk. He was probably in his early 40s. He doesn't say a word. He just walks over to the jukebox, puts in some coins and plays Flowers on the Wall by the Statler Brothers. As the song started he stood on top of a table and sang every single line. Quite well actually. When the song ended he dismounted the table and walked off into the night. The only reason I know this absolutely happened is because my friend remembers it too. It was honestly a spellbinding experience. As soon as you mention a Waffle House, we all believe you. They exist outside of time and nature. The American version of Doctor Who. Doctor Who flies a Waffle House. The Waffle House is just a TARDIS with a working chameleon circuit. That man was just trying to make that Waffle House a waffle home. When I was 8 or 9 I was working my paper route when a wolf ran out of someone's house and started coming towards me when the owner screamed at it and it turned around. I'd never seen a wolf in real life before, but I also had never seen a dog that size that also looks like a wolf. I hauled her home and told my parents, which were like through a year. A couple weeks later it was in the news that those neighbors had been illegally keeping a couple half-wolf bred dogs. My hometown has a very unique looking bar. The signage and style are very iconic to the bar. The bar is also definitely not a chain as my family knows the owner well, and he's run the place for the past 35 odd years. Imagine our surprise when on a trip in Thailand to find the exact same bar down to the unique way they spell the name of the place and all the signage. My family tells the guy back home about the place and he cannot believe an exact replica of his original concept bar exists. Someone liked it so much they copied the idea. Someone did well enough with their original concept that they could afford to open one up in Thailand and act surprised when someone noticed. I was in year 2, so like 7 years old, and asked my teacher to go to the toilet. All was well. I walk along into one of the stools and look into the toilet to see a pure white log of shit. As soon as I see it, the stench brutally attacks my nostrils as my eyes tear up, and I back out of the stall coughing uncontrollably from the smell. I left without doing my business, and no one to this day believes me. It was not toilet paper wrapped around a poo. It was more like someone spray painted a piece of crap. It was one solid log. White poop is possible. I had a white poop once. It was like my poop died and I was staring at its ghost. It's bizarre. That's one way to put it. The ghost of junk food's past. 18 or 19 years ago. Flat tire on way to midterm. No spare available. Professor was really understanding. Let me make it up. Working poor. So I was just going from beta to beta for a bit. Come finals. Another flat tire. Had left early enough to get to campus that I wasn't worried. Called tow truck for assistance. 1 mile behind me. On highway. I start seeing smoke. Turns out the tow truck on its way to me caught fire mid-trip. Professor didn't believe me. Had to retake the course. This is the story I share when people wonder why I always give people the benefit of the doubt. One day my Jetta had a flat tire, so I asked my bro for a ride to work. He blew his tire taking me to work. So I called my aunt and she ran out of gas when she showed up to pick me up. So we called my grandma and she showed up and bumped into my brother's car while he was changing the tire and knocked it off the jack. You can't make this stuff up. I missed work that day, but then some guy came by and offered to buy my brother's car. My bro said sure, fine. It was a classic Firebird. When I was a young adult, Vladimir Putin came to our house for dinner. I'm assuming you're from Russia then? Interested to know the context of this. I'm Canadian. My dad was in charge of security at the athletes village for the World Universiade Games being held in our city, and some Russian officials wanted to have a typical Canadian meal at a typical Canadian house. The RCMP forewarned us that at least one of the attendees would be a KGB agent, but I think there may have been 2 of them. What I remember about Putin was that he was going to get married when he returned home and was going to be studying German as he would be posted to Dresden in a year or 2. He was polite and didn't say much. He was just a young blonde guy, introduced as part of the security team. Oh wow. How interesting, I did not expect that. Thanks for sharing. I once saw a shirtless black man in cargo shorts riding upon a horse when crossing the highway somewhere along the Texas-Oklahoma border. He also had a Bluetooth speaker blasting Tupac songs when he rode across the highway. This was in August 2018. I think about it sometimes. I grew up in North Texas. That seems quite believable. Horses on the sidewalk was a weekly occurrence when out and about. Lol. I worked at a Whataburger in North Texas when I was a teen in the 80s. And it was a weekly occurrence for someone to ride a horse or horses through our drive-thru and order food. I worked with a guy who hand wrote a note to himself in which he misspelled his own name. I worked with a guy who carved his name into a workbench. He misspelled it. I was in elementary school and a circus was in the city, and they thought it would be cool to bring the elephant to our schoolyard. It was awesome. Even though we were only allowed to watch it from inside the classroom as it walked around with its tamer. My parents told me I was talking shitty and they will be very angry if I don't stop to talk about it. There was an elephant at our school and I couldn't tell them, made me sad. Edit. Spelling. Because I'm a German potato. My kindergarten teacher had a pet llama and lion. He had brought the llama to school once and it spit on me. Very gross, their spot stinks. The lion, we only saw photos of it in their backyard with the llama. In the photos was also his roommate. It took me until my early 20s to realize that was his husband. This was around back quote 89. 2 gay guys, a llama and a lion walked into a bar. Bartender, is this some kind of pride parade? You are a genius. Honestly. I once got myself handcuffed to my motorbike by an angry hawk. It's unbelievable how strong the grip on raptors is until they have their talons sunk into your hand meats and there's no one around for miles. So you just have to stand there like the dumbass you are wailing into the wind until the pissed off upside down bad takes pity on you and lets you go. It sounds like a movie moment in the making of a supervillain. Crazy experience. Did you get some scars? Mercifully its talons were so sharp that the cuts were clean and barely left any scars, though they were very deep and I had to be super careful to keep them from getting infected. Those talons zipped through the meat of my hand like it was marshmallow. I remember at the time my brain couldn't process that I couldn't pry its claws open with all my strength, yet its legs were only as thick as my finger. Brain forgot there's a reason falconers wear those thicker gloves. The muscles for the talons are higher up. The featherless parts of the legs are just the tendons. Just like the muscles you use to close your fingers are in your forearms, not your wrists, or your calf muscles versus your ankle tendons. Yeah, obviously, but when its talons are buried in your flesh and your every attempt to pry its toes open is just met with it tightening its grip even further, and you know you are physically very strong, but this bad with skinny legs is stronger. It doesn't make sense to your brain in the moment. The pain might have much to do with that also. XD. I'm an anesthesiologist and actually had a malignant hypothermia case. My friend, who is an actual doctor now, is from Ireland and has malignant hypothermia. He was getting a procedure done in Ireland when he found out he had this. Who just happened to be there, the one and only anesthesiologist in the country familiar with it, who literally went to that hospital that day to do a lecture on none other than malignant hypothermia. Saved his life. Crazy. Similar story. I had a motorcycle crash and my foot was very swollen after. Went to the They x-rayed me. They said it was just soft tissue damage and would heal on its own. They were about to dismiss me when a student orthopedist asks if I would mind if he examined my foot as part of his training. He poked me about, then told me not to leave, but could I wait for his professor. He called the professor and half an hour later the guy arrived and examined me. He confirmed the junior guy's hunch that I had a severe Lisfranc fracture. https://my Cleveland Clinic org/health/diseases/22237 Lisfranc fracture, and would lose the use of my foot if not operated on immediately. I was in surgery the next day and it means that I can still walk on it today. The really freaky bit is not just that the trainee orthopedist had just been assigned my case randomly, not just that he had attended a lecture about Lisfranc fractures that exact morning, but also that his professor is the leading expert in the country on Lisfranc fractures. When I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, I went to work with my dad one summer day. There was an older man in the lobby area of the office waiting for an appointment. He started talking to me and asked what my favorite candy was. I told him it was this white nougat candy that had these little jelly bits in it. I don't even know what it was called, and it's not a very common candy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the exact candy I described. It seemed like magic. I took the candy, but was afraid to eat it, and a bit ashamed I accepted candy from a stranger. I gave it to my dad and was going to tell him what happened, but he opened and ate the candy. I never told him, but watched him closely that day in case it was poisoned or magic. He's still alive, so I guess the candy was fine. Jujube nougat by chance. While bowling, I didn't release the ball when I was supposed to. The arc continued over my head like a softball pitch. The ball landed perfectly in the lane's ball return. Wow, that sounded made up even to me. I kicked a guy out of a bar. He ran into the middle of a super busy street, turned towards our staff, and slapped both his hands as hard as he could on the asphalt 5 or 6 times like Donkey Kong. His palms must have looked like ground beef the next morning. If we are doing bar S, I could write a book. Owned a pub for 17 years. In the immortal words of Dr. Fraser Crane. I'm listening. I really should sit down and type up some of the weird arrests sometime. Here's a few brief ones, since we're slow tonight and I've got a minute. We've had a woman pass out in the bathroom on the can and wake up in a pitch black bathroom and pub at 4:30 am. Came out and set the motion alarms off. I get a call from alarm company and can see someone inside the pub on the cameras. I jump out of bed, grab my 9mm carry and a bright flashlight, head to the pub. I get here and there's a cop car at the front door and one at the back. I never called them. I was gonna handle it myself. And they said apparently someone had called them from inside the pub. Turns out it was a girl we knew who was drunker than we thought at 1:30. She disappeared and we assumed she left. She usually would leave with whoever would pay her tab. Very friendly lady, but was asleep in a bathroom stall. Came out of the bathroom and the alarm system went nuts. She was absolutely fucking traumatized. We rolled an ambulance to check on her. She was fine, just drunk. And the EMTs took her home. Because one of the EMTs said, I know where she lives. We can just drop her off at home. Yeah, I bet you know where she lives. Lol. Had a dude get teased for hours by one of my servers who used to be a Hooters girl. He really believed he was gonna take her home after her shift. Instead she did her checkout, slammed a martini and a shot, and went out the back door to her boyfriend's car. That dude ended up kicking a toilet to pieces in a sexuality frustrated rage. I caught him and made him withdraw $400 from the ATM for replacement or I call the cops. Next day I'm up early to go buy a new toilet, and this guy calls my cell phone as I'm pulling into Lowe's. He is asking if he can come fix it because he doesn't have that money. I said, I know. I have the money. Also you're banned now, so you cannot fix it. He was really bummed. Had someone ess their pants and leave their crappy boxes underneath the table. Had a cook attempt to stab another cook. Apparently they are from neighboring areas of the same country and have some beef. He bolted out the back door before cops came and never saw him again. His paperwork ended up being fraudulent. Take no offense, but you didn't check the bathrooms before closing? Just so there's nobody choking on their own vomit or anything? Or you just forgot that one night? I once saw a panther in an area of the country where they should not be. I mean, panthers don't observe state lines. They don't have maps. You're underestimating the noble and cartographically astute panther race, my friend. I didn't think it was that weird, but I went to a museum in London where they had a piano in the cafe area. A guy goes over to the piano, flexes his knuckles, and proceeds to play about half an hour of the most insanely elaborate pieces you've ever heard. Just absolutely knocks it out of the park. He finishes, stands up, takes a bow, and everyone in the cafe bursts into spontaneous applause. People are cheering. It turns out that he's a Russian concert pianist in town for a performance that weekend. And we all just got a preview of his show. Everyone I've told about this finds it entirely unbelievable because everyone clapped. I just get the same old response referencing the meme, which I don't really get, because I'm pretty sure most people would applaud a concert pianist. Ah well.